morning, everybody. Good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Today, myself, Chris P, is absolutely thrilled to be joined by two legends, Mr. Tom Goodman and Sam Snow, who are indeed, if you've gone through the National Youth License, you must have come across these two gentlemen. Our core value this month is humility, and boy, do these guys exemplify humility, and I am so honored to have these gentlemen part of my journey. So enough talking for me. Sam and Tom, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Brilliant. Now, Tom, if you want to start, we'll talk a little about your journey, and then we'll to Sam, and then we'll get into what today's objectives are.
I'm sorry, Chris, did you say you wanted me to get going on under six?
Just give us a brief overview of your journey, like a snippet of where you're at, how you ended up at US Youth Soccer, just a real quick snippet, the whistle stop, as it were.
All right. I can do this in about 10 seconds. Actually started playing soccer way back when in Springfield, Massachusetts at 5 years old. Played in my junior high school, played in my high school, went to Springfield College, played 4 years at Springfield College, got drafted in the NASL in 1975. Went on to become a teacher and soccer coach, and coached at the middle school and high school level for a little bit of time, and then got involved in the club scene and started my own club, World Class Soccer, in Connecticut. And we had a few USU Soccer National Championships out of that program. And then eventually went to get my licenses with US Soccer, and was asked after I got my A license if I wanted to be an instructor, if I would consider being an instructor. Jumped on that, became an instructor with US Soccer, and then was asked by USU Soccer to become their first full-time national director of coaching. So that's the long and short of it.
Yeah, that was the whistle stop tour. Sam, you want to jump on and give us a quick intro to your journey?
Well, of course, a lot of it is similar to Tom's, since we're of the same generation and same soccer era in the United States. Mine at the beginning was a little bit different. I was in Central Florida, where I was born and raised, and started playing in high school because no soccer existed beyond that. We were on the very first high school team. I was on the very first high school team in Florida, in Central Florida, in Orlando to be specific. After that, I went up to Virginia, to a small college, Virginia Wesleyan, and played there. And went to graduate school back down in Florida, where I had the great fortune during that time to be able to train in the mornings with the Tampa Bay Rowdies. And this was the old NASL when it was at its peak. And their starting goalkeeper, he and I were high school teammates. So that's how I was able to get in. And Gordon Jago, God bless him, who was the head coach at the time, said, yeah, come on in. So talk about a great opportunity to really learn a lot more about the game. And then college coaching, some high school coaching, some club coaching, eventually ended up as the state technical director for Louisiana Soccer. And then from there, Tom Goodman, hired me to come on and help him at US Youth. And I carried on there until 2018. And I have to mention, Chris, because it ties in directly to our conversation this morning about coaching children. Particularly through my years in the 80s and 90s, I had the great opportunity to be mentored by Dr. Tom Fleck, who was the author, the primary author of a lot of the materials that a lot of us are still using in coaching children. So that was a great opportunity for me to learn directly from the well.
Fantastic, fantastic. And what you didn't mention was, of course, that you were recently inducted into the Hall of Fame at the Wesleyan as well. So uh, I'm correct in saying that, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you
Yeah,
for the plug.
yeah,
Congrats,
no problem.
congrats, Sam.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Tom.
so as you can see, like, let me ask you this actually question, and you touched upon it there, Sam. I said, I'm going to ask this question to both of you, and then we'll get into the understanding the characteristics of the children ages 5 through 8. But what coach or teacher inspired you in your throughout your careers or stuff? And I'll go with you first, Tom. And I know, Sam, you said Dr. Fleck, but I'm sure you've had other influences as well.
As far as a coach, I'm talking about a coach when I was a player, who had the most impact on me and sort of directed me into this teaching end of the game, was a gentleman by the name of Lee Kenworthy. He was my high school coach, and he came on the scene, and he was one of the first guys in the country to get his A license when Detmar Kramer came over and opened up the schools. And he used all of Kramer's little book, at all our training sessions. So at that point, that was sort of state of the art. And this guy just was a fanatic, about technique and decision making, tactics, and all that stuff. And I learned so much from him and was so impressed that he truly had an impact on me to where I landed. But I would also like to say that Tom Fleck did as well. So I support that statement, Sam. Flecky was a huge part of my, my growth.
Brilliant. Sam?
As far as coach role models go, I would go all the way back to when I was about 11 or 12 years old and playing half pint football at the downtown Orlando Boys Club. And Jack Penatellius, how's that, guys? To remember a coach, both names from that far back, and just the way that he coached, the influence that he had. And I have to just mention him being a very good role model. Different sport, but excellent coaching role model. And then I've already mentioned Tom Fleck, and I would add to that a good bit of influence from Bob Gansler and Walt Chislewitz back in the day.
Brilliant, brilliant. And just for the coaches listening, it's so important to think about the influence and impact that we can make. And I'm fortunate enough to be talking to two of the coaches that made a difference and an impact on my life in the two of you. So thank you for your role in my journey. I appreciate you both. So now let's dive in, right? We're going to talk about the characteristics of under sixes, under sevens, under eights. Under sevens and under eights can be paired together sometimes. But Tom, give us some characteristics and things we can expect from under sixes.
All right. Well, that puts a smile on my face all the time. Every time I ever lectured on this, it just makes you smile. I'm going to sort of break it down like the National Youth License or the formal National Youth License, and the mental or psychological characteristics, the physical and socially. Mentally, we talk about these kids, 5 and 6 year olds, having short attention spans. Very egocentric. It's all about them. They're very sensitive. So that means they're easily bruised psychologically. If someone yells at them, they'll cringe. They'll just shut down. They're very imaginative. They love to use their imagination and pretend. They tend to only one task at a time, for sure, can process small bits of information, and actually the time and space relations thing is very immature at that age. Jumping into the physical stuff, they're constantly in motion and full speed ahead, basically, with this age group or these two age groups. They're easily fatigued with rapid recovery. Their eye-hand and eye-foot coordination is primitive. They can balance on their good foot barely, so that if you get out there and say, force them to balance on their right foot, they might be able to do it. Tell them to go to their other foot, and they typically fall. Catching skills are not developed, but they do love to run, jump, fall, roll. So any activities that you can do with them that allow them to hit the dirt, roll, and have fun that way is impressive to them. They love it. Physically, they're about 3 feet to maybe 3 feet 4, 3 feet 5 inches tall, and they weigh between, 30 and 50 pounds, depending on their bone structure and so forth. Socially, they love to show off. They have little or no real concern for team activities because of this egocentric thing of theirs. They tend to, we always say that they tend to parallel play. They'll play, in the sandbox next to each other, doing their own projects, but they're not working on the project together. The influential person in their life is definitely mommy. And they like to mimic goofy actions. So I think that sort of gives you a picture of these kids. And Sam, if you have anything to add to that, please do.
Yeah, no, I think you covered it very well, Tom. It's the big part for everybody to remember is these are natural characteristics of the age, so that they are egocentric is not anything to be concerned about. It's just a natural stage of 5 and 6 year olds, and they grow and eventually become more and more connected with other people. And so that influences the way that they play. So that explains for everybody, I hope, the quote unquote beehive soccer that they see out on the field with that age group.
Yeah, I just going through my youth license, Tom. I had a group of under 6s, and I was doing my video, and we're going back years. And I had a group, and we were doing the game. I can do this. Can you? And little I forget his name. We'll call him Sam. Gets the ball and says, "I can do this. Can you?" And he just full on volleys the ball into the group of where we're standing. And your assessment of me was risk management with about 17 exclamation marks. So, and then after that, we're playing a game back home in our normal environment. And it was bring back, where we throw the ball away, or travel agent, as it's called. So right. I throw the ball away. Now, Jack is 22 years old and at the Air Force Academy. And at the time, he was 4 years old. So I threw the ball away and I said, "Jack, bring the ball back using your imagination." So we go through maybe 7 rotations, and I turn around, and then Jack is stood there like this. And I'm like, "Jack, what are you doing?" He says, "Coach, I'm using my imagination, but the ball still won't come back." So,
classic.
But just goes into when we're working with these children, the things that we have to consider, right?
Well, what's funny too is another example is I was running one of the schools, and one of the coaches got out like yourself and said, "I can do this." And then this little girl came up, and I said, "What can you do?" And she did a round off and about 14 back handsprings, and it landed like perfect. And I said, "Yes, you can." I think she wanted me to try it, but anyway, it was funny what they come up with, because you never know. So
Yeah, so listen, and I love what you gave there, and I think what we often forget is when we're and we'll get into this, with the practices and activities, but I think we often forget that there are not many adults, and a 5 and 6 year old are not many 7 and 8 year olds, right? So we really have to be careful with the information that we're giving them. Otherwise, for those that have been on licenses recently in that first week, you feel like you're drinking from that proverbial fireman's water hose, right? So
Yeah.
bite-sized information.
Yep.
Brilliant. Sam, do you want to talk about the 7 and 8s and maybe step off on how they differ from 5s and 6s?
Absolutely, Chris. I think if you're coaching 7 and 8 year olds, there's going to be a lot of what Tom just mentioned that is going to continue into that age group. So we mentioned a moment ago about the youngest ones being egocentric, and so the 7 and 8 year olds are still pretty well egocentric. They're just beginning to evolve out of that. And if parents and coaches think about what else is going on in the life of those 7 and 8 year olds, it begins to make sense that they're beginning to slowly evolve, right? They're in school and they're beginning to interact more and more with more people, more teachers, varying environments. So they get to 7 and 8 as a coach. One of the things that I want to do is begin to get them into pairs work. So I continue doing individual things with them, dribbling exercises, et cetera, et cetera. Still do a lot of individual work, physical literacy, so on. But I also want to begin to do pairs work to where they're first learning how to cooperate. And that's the underlying piece that people miss. They look at the passing and the receiving skills, but they don't realize that that requires cooperation between two 7-year-olds. And that these 7 and 8 year olds look at the soccer ball as a toy. And so I ask coaches and parents all the time, what would happen if you gave one toy to 8 7-year-olds, and they all laugh because they know that sharing is still not a real good skill, social skill, emotional skill at 7 and 8 years of age. And then I say, well, why is it that you expect that to suddenly occur when you put them out on the soccer field and you only give them one ball? So this pairs work is beginning to work on that social, emotional, psychological piece of cooperation and sharing, which technically sharing on a soccer field is executed via passing. Here, I have the toy called a ball. I'm going to share it with my friend Chris, okay? And so I pass the ball to you. Now, that's the beginning of this pairs work, that I have to willingly give you the toy on purpose. That's different than I was dribbling and I dribbled too hard and it got way out in front of me and Chris swooped in and took the ball away. That's not a pass. You'll see that happen in those games. So as a coach, I got to continue to nudge them down that path towards this pairs work. And it probably starts off with Sam playing the pass to his friend Chris, who lives next door. So Sam and Chris already have some trust between them. And then eventually Sam passes to Tom, who's on the team, but doesn't live on the same street as Sam. So he's not as accustomed to playing with Tom and sharing toys with Tom, and doesn't have quite the same trust until it builds up, and eventually it does build up, and they get to that, and eventually you'll see them passing to any teammate on the team. But that's one of the huge milestones for coaching in this age group, and it probably will take a year or more for that to fully evolve.
Brilliant. Tom, can you build off that? Or did he cover everything?
Yeah, no, great job. I was just going to say that it is so important for parents who typically are the coaches of those younger teams to understand all this, because they typically want to see soccer being played, and they don't realize all these psychological bits of information that Sam just mentioned, that it takes a while for kids to build up trust and all that, and even to have appropriate technique enough to reach their teammate with a pass and everything else. So getting the adults to understand is pretty important. So again, education, 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 right?
Yeah, I think that's huge. And then obviously drip feeding it, reinforcing it, not just the one-off, here's our philosophy, but just continually doing it, right? But when we witness these ages, so for example, 6 years ago, I went to Virginia Rush, and they were playing 4v4 with under 6 and under 8s, and we were playing 4 12-minute quarters. So I was observing the first month or so I was there, and they were doing, you know, for a Virginia Beach is a very, Sam, and you can attest to this, it's a very military town, but sometimes there's no uniformity, right? So they're playing 4v4, 4 12-minute quarters, doing throw-ins, kick-ins, corner kicks, goal kicks, natural restarts. So I just decided to time how long the ball was in play. And for a 12-minute quarter, the ball was in play for 1 minute 56 seconds. You know, so I was like, you know, we're doing away with that. We're going to play soft sidelines. We're going to put the ball in play at every opportunity. Give the ball to the player who's on the fringe, as opposed to, you know, not letting little Sally or little Billy get the ball, and just started to redevelop that. And the other thing is all the adults, almost every adult, is standing there yelling pass, you know, even at the U6s, right? So it's just like you said, reinforcing and having the wherewithal to keep going. No, this is our philosophy. This is why we're doing this. This is why we're doing this. This is why we're doing this. And you know, I learned from the both of you in a couple of tricks where we talk to the parents and the adults through the children. So we would sit the children down of these ages and say, hey, who likes coloring? And, you know, we're going back 10 years, right? Now you'd have to ask, who likes Minecraft? Who likes this? Raise your hand. And I'll ask the children, when you play Minecraft or Fortnite, do your parents stand over your shoulder and yell directions at you? Oh, no. What about when you color? Go faster, stay inside the lines. And we kind of talk to the adults through the kids. Now, some get it and some don't. And what we've started to do is show the picture of Messi and Suarez sitting down, watching their own children, right? Now, if these guys can do it, you guys can do it. But I think, Tom, you hit the nail on the head there, and it segues nicely, right, talking to adults. What are some of the priorities, would you say, for U6 coaches, beginner and maybe advanced?
First of all, I see them more as facilitators, you know, in the environment, like friendly helpers, organizers, and definitely motivators. They got to be patient. They got to be enthusiastic, imaginative, for sure. Everything that they do really should be, as far as activities, should be fun activities. So whether they find those in a book or whether they make them up themselves, you know, everything's got to reach out to that kid's imagination in all these fun activities. The environment really has to be more important than the technical side of the game. So creating the right atmosphere through these activities and the use of equipment to make it attractive to the kids and all that, I think is important. It's much more important that they are kind, sensitive, motivator, like I said, than it is that they're an accomplished soccer player. They, you know, don't really have to be. It makes more sense as the kids get older, you know, let's say at U10 or U12, to have somebody coaching them that can demonstrate and all that. But at this level, at U6 and at U8, you don't really need that person. It's nice to have them, but it's more about their personalities. And so that's what I have to say about that, Chris.
So brilliant. Just so I can summarize there. So a facilitator, right? Someone who puts the fun in fundamentals, or as my good friend from Manchester United, Tom Statham, says, a facilitator. So someone who can act childlike but not childish. Engaging environment, using activities, the use of equipment, someone who's kind and sensitive. But I also think getting down to their level, at their eye level, right? To help and build that trust. But coaches, beware, because you could become a climbing frame, even in these social distancing times.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Sam, would you add anything there? I think Tom hit the nail on the head. For the U6 coach, is there any differences maybe in the U8 coach? And I came at you with two questions there, coach, because I know that you can handle that.
2 ears, 2 questions. So I think Tom covered it very well. And all of those characteristics and skills, that coaching skills that Tom mentioned, absolutely have to carry on into coaching the 8 and unders. I would add patience as a quality of coaches of young players. And maybe as we've sort of been discussing, some of that lesson about patience needs to be coached to the parents by the coach, as well as the coach, him or herself, being patient and just knowing that they are not, these children are not going to overnight evolve into accomplished soccer players, that it's a decades-long journey to become an accomplished soccer player. And so patience is a big piece that I think the coaches need to have as they work, and especially as they introduce new things to the kids. So at the 6 and under and 8 and under age groups, almost everything is new that's being introduced soccer-wise to the kids, and even non-specifically soccer. So that child that needed help with tying her shoes, well, at 5 years old, yeah, that's still a big need. At 8, they can probably do it by themselves. They might need some help once in a while, but but at 8, learning how to intentionally make a diagonal pass to a teammate out on the sideline is a new thing, is a new thing to wrap your head around. So it takes patience to know that learning takes time, and it's not as clear cut as in an assembly line process.
Brilliant. I think I lost you for a second there, Sam. So Sam, I remember you saying something, and I think I heard it on a podcast, and we've had a conversation about this, but your words were, as a coach, we need to be the loudest when things have gone well, and I think as many coaches, you walk around the fields in America and Europe, and we are deficit detectives as coaches. We're pointing out everything that's wrong instead of being, like you said, the loudest when things have gone really, really well.
Very good.
I think that's huge, right? And we do have a couple of questions that have come in, so bear with me as I clumsily go through this. Okay. And thanks, Megan. Megan, they can't see us and hear us okay. So this question has come in from Ruben Mares. Thank you, Ruben. He said, I just heard Tom and Sam in reference to the US. Parents sometimes expect too much from the parent and coach. There are some parents who yell at their kids when they are not doing well. How can we address this?
So this piece is the coach talking to the parents?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm an advocate of, as that coach, talk to the parents every training session and every match. And I actually learned that from a coach taking the youth license course as a candidate years ago. And it works wonders. Take 5 minutes at every training session and every match talking to the parents. And sometimes that message is about the parental behavior, the spectator behavior at the games of children. And what would you be doing at the games of your children? What would you be doing if your child was in the school play at this age, would you sit in the audience and yell out stage directions? Or would you just sit and watch the play and let it happen? Do the same thing with the soccer game.
Yeah, I love that. And such great advice there. Tom, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I definitely ditto. And one thing that I think is important is to follow along Sam's idea of talking at every practice, every training session, and every game is always just focusing on the good stuff. To your point before, is like not even bringing up the bad stuff. I mean, you can bring it up along the lines of like, here's what I saw that you did really well today in training. You know, you worked very hard, and boy, your dribbling is getting better, and blah, 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 blah. But then saying, but we do have to work on something, you know, that way, rather than being negative or putting the kids down, but having the parents around all the time, you know, so that they get in the habit on their way home in the car, you know, saying something positive to the kids and talking to the parents about that. That's what they should be doing in the car, you know, pointing out the good stuff. And we're going to work on this in the backyard, you know, or whatever.
Yeah, and I think you both, you know, raised two fantastic points there. Obviously around the, you know, just spending 5 minutes to build rapport with the parents at every session. Hey, this is what we worked on. This is what you can work at home with your child, but also controlling the narrative in the car journey on the way there and the way home. I think that is absolutely massive. And we you know, obviously we do some stuff here at our club where we go looking back, looking forward, but you know, stolen from shamelessly from US Soccer and the grassroots. But we also do glows and grows. You know, here's something good, and you know, we try and take the score out of it, but just touching those bases to build those rapports and relationships, I think is huge and massive. So this is a question from Matt Ream. He says, what are some of the methods or tools you've used to help educate the parents and spectators as the importance of not coaching from the sidelines? Is it as simple as continued face-to-face communication? And then how would we address that and recommend about going this in COVID-19 and current world? Obviously, we touched upon some of those, but I think the thing to hit on there is how do we go about that now in the times that we're currently in?
I've got an idea, something that I'd use at those age groups with parents, but it's sort of a little contradictory because of the pandemic. I used to invite parents to participate in training with me, to be helpers, to be assistant coaches, whether it's, you know, putting down cones, setting up an activity, giving positive support to the kids as they're out there in these activities, and really sort of boosting the kids during the activity. I know with the pandemic right now, I guess, you know, you can still do that with safe distancing, but the environments that you create, usually for kids at this age, they're not too spacey, right? They're not too spatial. So I guess that is a little bit of a concern. Can they keep out and away from the kids enough to be involved? But I think involvement is huge. That helps the parents understand more what's going on with the kids.
Yeah, brilliant. Sam, can you build off that? Is there anything to add?
Well, I think perhaps the pandemic is in an odd way helping a little bit with that spectator behavior, because either spectators are told stay in the parking lot, you're not allowed to be on the sidelines of the field. It just depends on the phase of the health officials allowing in terms of gatherings. But even if you're allowed down on the sidelines during a game, the parents and other people, they have to space themselves between each other. So it's a little harder for critical mass to occur on the part of spectators. that sometimes, somebody starts yelling a few things and it feeds a little bit from one person to the next. Regardless of pandemic situation or a healthy environment where we're kind of back to spectators all crowded along the touchline, I think it's important for coaches in that regular conversation that he or she has with the parents of the kids to talk about the impact, the negative impact of saying too much from the sidelines. And my personal experience has been that when I've done that with parents and explained to them that your child at these very young ages is not really able to multitask. And then I'll use an example from home. How good is your kid at watching TV and hearing you say, go brush your teeth? They cannot multitask. And they all get it because you just use analogies from their daily lives and the way that normal kids behave at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. And then say, hey, the same thing's happening out here on the soccer field. So I have found most parents, when we explain it to them, voluntarily do a great job of being quiet spectators.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. We do have more questions coming in, and Sam, I do know that you have to get off in around 10 minutes. So we'll go through these, we'll fly through these and still get your thoughts and ideas on the environment and activities. So it says, I like your comment about getting the ball into play quickly at games and giving the ball to players on the periphery. What are some other methods to better engage players who are less aggressive or assertive at these young ages? Sam, we'll go with you first.
Well, I think that, Chris, is probably going to be relatively easy to do for the coach at a training session, where as the coach, I can manipulate the situation a little bit more and specifically get some of those kids that are still climbing a steep learning curve, get them more directly involved. It's at games that it's going to be harder. And in addition to some modifications, such as what Tom discussed and you discussed too, about how do we maybe have some spare balls on the sidelines and we put them back into play quickly so we're not wasting time chasing balls all over the place during a game. It's how do I give that kid who has the steep learning curve just more playing time and more opportunities to be directly engaged. But that's going to occur more naturally in the game if during training sessions I've managed to help bring that kid along by getting that kid more involved and getting that kid more opportunities with the ball and more decision-making opportunities and guiding that player along.
Brilliant. And that kind of goes into environment, right? Before we get into there, so like you've got the U6 coach, you've got the U8 coach, and they fight the mentality of the beehive mentality. At U6, the federation tells us to play 4v4. The US Youth Soccer used to tell us 3v3, and I've had discussions with both of you that maybe it should be 2v2 as the Belgian model. But it's not really 3 against 3, it's 1 against 5 or 1 against 7. So is it important at U6 and U8, or when does it become important to teach that distancing and those boundaries of space and stuff like that?
I'll say that we start to talk about that at the 8U or U8. I don't know what the term is now. Is it 8U or U8? But I think we start talking about those issues, spacing and distance and angles and all that, but not to a great extent. We're introducing it, I believe, at U8. At U6, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. We want that to be total fun and chaos, right? But at U8, I think we introduced some of those things. Maybe we stop play a little bit, and make an educational match on match day and do a little bit of that, which I have done with clubs that I've worked with. Let them play and then make a coaching point for each team, each half or each quarter. And, I found that that sort of helps. They're in the thick of it. You're not overcoaching. You're just painting a picture for them. You stop it, paint a picture, talk about the angle, talk about the distance, and then on with the play. So I think at U8, you can do it on a very limited basis, start it, introduce it, and then certainly at U10, more, U12, more, and so forth.
Brilliant. Sam, anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, it's well said. It's recognizing how kids at these ages, in any aspect of their lives, are still learning this issue of space, of personal space. What is personal space out on the soccer field? What is general space? Well, those are two concepts that apply to children off of the soccer field as well as on it. And so it's not until they start to get around 7 or 8, as Tom was saying, that they begin to understand a little bit of the idea of general space, and then, how do I begin to interact in all of that space with other people? Their abilities to visually judge distance is still raw at those ages. So all of that affects their positioning out on the field and their ideas about passes and how far to make a pass, or how far even before passes, how far to make a shot. What's beginning to be realistic about how far away can I be from the goal to make a shot. That judgment of distance is still very raw at those ages. So it's just all part of the evolution of these age groups.
Yeah, and of course they're all so different, right? And you have to know who's in front of you, and even though they're the chronological and biological age, there could be such a massive gap as well, right? You've got the
Yes.
big bear of an 8-year-old and the 8-year-old that could be the size of a 5-year-old. But then socially, the little one could be way ahead, and the big one might be, developmentally challenged per se. So Sam, I'm going to give this question to you, and it says, how do we deal with the parents who keep telling their kids they should play like Cristiano or Leo Messi, or they are the stars and they already look like the stars?
Well, first of all, mom and dad, realize that your 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old probably doesn't really know who Lionel Messi is. Maybe a little bit if one or both of the parents are big fans, and those games are on TV a whole lot, or unless you live in Barcelona and you're actually going to those games live. So when your child is a teenager, the odds are those players are no longer the vogue. Some other younger player has become the vogue 10 years from now, 15 years from now, when your youngster is really getting into high performance soccer, high school age, college age, what have you. So once again, patience comes to mind. That you just have to be realistic. And I think, Chris, there's a lot of folks out there, be the parents of the kids or some of the coaches or some club administrators, have a misunderstanding as to what's the timeline for developing as a soccer player. They think it's going to happen pretty quick, and it's not. It takes years and years. So be patient with these kids who are 8 and younger.
Brilliant. Sam, it's time for you to jump off. We'd love to have you stay, but I can't thank you enough for your time with us. And we look forward to a part 2 of the 3 of us again.
Excellent. I look forward to it
Thanks,
as well.
Sam.
Thanks, Tom. It's been a lot of fun.
Take
Thank
care,
you,
buddy.
guys.
Talk soon.
Okay.
Be well. See you, Sam. So
Bye-bye.
Here's a question for you, Tom. And it says, what best advice do you have for a coach who's too fixated on the result or outcome of the U6 or U8 game?
My advice is take a breath and relax. They're only 5 and 6 years old, and I say that with a smile. I'll go back to an example when I first taught. My first teaching job was in 1975. And I went into a middle school as a math teacher and a phys ed teacher. And I just wanted perfection. And it was a rude awakening for me because I was dealing with middle school kids, and this could be 5 and 6 year olds, but I was dealing with middle school kids who they weren't going to be perfect. And it frustrated me, and I was just expecting it. And when I didn't get it, I was sort of angry and frustrated, and it made my life more miserable as a teacher than I believe I made the kids. So that's what the advice I'm giving to this coach at U6 is, just understand who you're coaching. All the characteristics we gave you a little while ago, and just understand that they have no control over the score of the game, and neither do you. Enjoy the game, enjoy watching them play.
Yeah, huge, great advice there. Here's another question, and we'll move into the activities a little bit, Tom. And
Sure.
he says, how would you deal with the exceptionally skilled player at these early ages? You know, and I'll jump in there, right? So we have some U6s that can dribble through the whole team, and it might be the coach's kid. Coach gets embarrassed because they've scored 15 goals, so they take the kid out. You know, encourage them, right? Because the country lacks dribblers. The most exciting players in the world are dribblers.
Yeah.
Let them
Yeah.
do.
And you know what? That works itself out usually. It may be in the beginning because that particular player's been playing in the backyard with an older brother or with the dad or with the mom because they were soccer players. So now the kid is pretty skilled. He's had a little bit of a head start on the other kids. Yeah, but you definitely don't want to restrict the kid because there's no way you're going to tell a 5 or a 6 year old, okay, all you can do is one touch the ball, to get them to give up the ball immediately. That is not going to happen. Plus, you're going to hamper their progress in the game. So I say leave it alone. Personally, I say leave it alone. Maybe I don't really think that, I've never restricted a kid personally. So yeah, leave it alone.
We're still ways of challenging them within training. Instead of 1v1, play 1v2, right? We can make the task a little different for them without constraining them or hampering them, like you said.
And you know what? That's a really good point, Chris, that you just made, because you can do that in most town programs. If the adults are aware of how the director of coaching or the rec director is running the program, that even in matches, you can do numbers up, numbers down. It doesn't have to be a 4v4 match, especially when everybody knows that one kid, and they probably all know who that is. If the coaches are on board and the parents are on board, you can do pretty much what you want to do at those age groups.
Yeah, and that's why, Tom, that we've been doing a lot of 2v2 within our School of Excellence Academy program as opposed to 4v4. Match day is 4v4, but a lot of trainings is 2v2, and just encouraging those dribblers and introducing. Sometimes we play goalkeepers, sometimes we don't, and we're just giving them different a variety of 2v2s where you have to dribble.
Yeah.
Stuff. So
that's excellent, Chris. Yeah.
Thank you, Coach. So now, what do the activities and the practice environment look like for? I guess you can take double duty for the 6s and then the 8s. And I know Sam touched upon it with the U8s, which was a lot of individual, but then starting to get players to share or put them in pairs. So moving from me to we. So give us the U6 activities, your favorites. I know Hit the Dirt's going to be in there. I know Get Out of There is going to be in there.
Let me preface that by like what Sam said a little bit about the U8s is sort of like what to teach the players, because if everybody understands that developmentally what to teach them, then the activities just flow. For instance, like for under 6 players, techniques and skills, well, certainly dribbling and trying to keep the ball close. And everybody frowns on the use of the toe, but I say keep the ball close with toe and inside of foot, you know, at the U6 level. Outside of the foot, it's almost impossible because a kid can't, you know, pigeon toe their foot at will, that kind of thing. Kicking the ball at the goal with toe inside of foot, and still not really the laces yet because they can't plantar flex their foot, you know. So understanding what you can teach, it might help lead you into the proper activities. Psychologically, sharing, fair play, dealing, how to play, emotional management, fitness-wise. We want movement education, balance, running, jumping, rolling, hopping, skipping, tactics, where's the field, moving in the correct direction, dealing with a ball rolling away from you, dealing with a ball rolling at you. So, you know, having said that, I sort of break down into training sessions. I call them dynamic activities, I call them relaxation activities, and dynamic competitive activities. A dynamic activity is something that typically everybody has a ball and there's lots of movement and everybody's working, but there's no pressure, no necessarily competition in it. A relaxation activity is to let the kids come down from the full speed ahead deal, and that can be a little game of I can do this, what can you do? Dynamic competitive is now a game of some sort where there's a bit of competition. So I like to see you start out with dynamic activities, intermingle with a relaxation, and finish with dynamic competitive activities. One of which is the game, you know, the game 3v3, 2v2, 4v4. So now into the activities. Relaxation activities, try this, which is I can do this, can you? The one I used to do, I don't know if you recall it, but I used to do, I'd get everybody behind me and I do toe, toe, heel, heel, outside, outside, inside, inside, duck, duck, pigeon, pigeon, flick, 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 flick. And all the kids are following me, you know, or the coach, and up on their toes, toe, toe, on their heels, heel, heel, you know, outside, outside, inside, inside, and you're manipulating your foot and all that. And it's a little song, and that's a relaxation activity.
Now, why is it important, Coach, to do the relaxation activities? Because I remember you talked about the U6s having one speed, so it's important for the relaxation activity to
bring them down. To bring them down from that that heart rate, you know, because they've been going fast and doing this and doing that, and it's to get their mind, because their attention span is so short. Now you bring them into something like a song, toe, toe, heel, heel, outside, outside, inside, and they get into it. They really get into it, even though they're not doing the right things with their feet. They start singing it. That's what kids do, you know?
Yeah, and they're mimicking, like you said, right? The importance of mimicking and just bringing that heart rate down to get them back in. Because they have two speeds, really, right? Go and stop.
That's it. That's it. And there's plenty more here, but I won't go into all of them because I know we have time constraint. dynamic kinds of activities, line-to-line dribbling, you know, where you have the kids on opposite sides, spaced apart appropriately, and they dribble to each other's lines, through each other and back and forth. And that's dynamic because there's lots of movement. They're concentrating on a ball. Interactive dribbling in a grid, everybody dribbling in and out of each other. The game of fetch or toss the ball, the one you brought up before, we got different names for it. Red light, green light, these are all dynamic. Musical soccer balls, body part dribbling, all that kind of stuff. Dynamic competitive is like, I don't know if you can hear that out there, that machine, but everybody's it. Everybody's it. Sharks and minnows. Sorry about that. I'm in a complex.
Okay. You're good, coach.
You know, cops and robbers, get out of there. Boss of the balls, and then of course the game. Those are dynamic, competitive type activities.
Brilliant.
So I don't know if you need me to explain any of those, but
they can look at the we can get that out to them too, though. Now give us some ingredients of what that environment would look like, right? So you're in your former position, you're walking across a park. What are the things that you want to see, right? You want to see at U6s and U8s.
well, I want to see, I want to hear them. I want to hear the players, the excitement. I want to hear that. And that could be laughing. That could be, you know, the coach chasing them, trying to kick the ball out of the box and them getting scared, but in a fun way. And, you know, I'm chasing you, I'm going to get your ball. And the kids squealing with, you know, excitement and movement. Unless they're doing a relaxation, then they're probably going to be laughing, because most of the relaxation activities are there to be fun. Chris, I don't know if you remember the coordination drill I used to do, where my
1, 2, 3, 4.
arms went out, and all that stuff. And that's even, it's fun with the little ones, but it's become even more fun with the older kids, the high school kids and everything, because it's competitive for them to make it work. But the little kids just have fun with the whole thing, and then saying, okay, let's speed it up, let's do turbo, and you know, they get all excited. So it's how you present it as a coach. Whether you do it well or not doesn't matter. It's just how you present it. So seeing fun going on, hearing fun going on, and activity. That's what I'm looking for when I'm crossing, you know, across the field and seeing what the environment looks like.
Brilliant. And would you agree that as a coach of under sixes, that our energy level and our enthusiasm have either got to match or exceed the children we're working with?
Absolutely.
Yeah, brilliant.
Absolutely. Well said. Yep.
Brilliant. Thanks, Coach. We do have another question. It might be a statement, actually, but let me look. There's in, and we'll start to wipe down. And it says, isn't this is from Ed Green out of Connecticut. Big Ed. He's written some long words, Coach, and I'm going to have trouble reading these. Isn't plantar flexion and inversion easier at this age than dorsiflexion and eversion? Coach, use one of your master's degrees to answer that question, please.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. But when I say plantar flexion and dorsiflexion, for a little kid, yeah, they're rubbery and all that, and maybe they can do that, but you have to hold that flexion when you're dribbling. It's not a loose ankle when you're dribbling, it's a tight ankle. You know, when you're kicking a ball, it's tight. They cannot do that yet. They can dorsiflex if you show them what to do, turn their toe up and all that, but they can't hold it tight enough to chip a ball, you know, with that dorsiflexion or whatever. it's so that's why I say it's easier for them to dribble the ball with the insides of their feet because it's there around the ball. But they're still not strong enough to hold those flexions, especially the, well, if we get to plantar flexion, especially plantar flexion, which is, when you strike a ball with your laces, they're just not strong enough yet.
Well, is this correct too, Coach, that at the under 5s and under 6s, the inner thigh muscle's not even developed, so the push pass is virtually impossible for most of them to do that, heel down, toe up, like we're talking about. Yet
Absolutely.
every adult almost is yelling pass. Or when the kid's at the top of the box and their leg goes back, everybody's yelling shoot.
Yeah. What's important too, and you're correct, Chris. What's important too is when we spoke about a kid being able to barely balance on their good foot, well, you think about it, their good foot usually is their right foot for most people. But if they're going to kick a ball, they have to plant their left foot. And people don't understand that they can't balance. They can't plant their foot down solidly and then swing through with their laces and kick a ball because they're not ready yet. Physically, they're just not ready. So they do whatever comes natural, like running into the ball. That's about all they can do, with the insides of their feet, because that's sort of the biggest surface at that point.
Yeah. Now, so how important, Coach, do tag and movement games become at these ages, bearing in mind that children love to be chased and love chasing adults? How important do those games become at these age groups?
It's, in my opinion, they're hugely important because of, there's a lot of stop and go that's very important in those movement games. The best athletes in the world or the best soccer players in the world can stop on a dime and change direction and so forth and so on. So any games that allow them to start developing, stop and go, change of direction, getting away from pressure, that kind of thing are hugely important in their development.
Brilliant. And then just on top of that, right, we like to teach a little bit of juggling. So one player, one ball, and we like to do, and I think I got this from you. So it was thigh, right thigh, double thigh, thigh, foot, thigh, foot. And we started to call it level up. So it's like a little bit of video game design. So every time they pass a level, they have to yell level up. Now, obviously their coordination is limited at 6 and U8, but how important is it for them to experience that struggle and then try these games even though their coordination isn't yet done? So I'm talking maybe 3 to 4 minutes, but with interjection of the coach and they're working towards a goal. How important would you say incorporating those activities are?
It's really important because you're starting to develop their receiving surfaces, receiving with your thighs. I mean, most people aren't going to be juggling down the field with their thighs and so forth, but it's all about how your touches on the ball as far as receiving. So anything you can do early on with juggling is going to help them understand how to receive it later on. Even though they're, popping it up and doing all this, they're starting to get comfortable with their laces. So taking a ball out of the air with their laces as they get older is going to be easier. Taking the ball out of the air with their thigh and killing it and dropping it to the ground is going to be easier because they understand that that's a surface that they can use. And as they get older, they'll understand how to kill a ball rather than, promote it. I think those are big time. And at U6 and U8, you can do lots of juggling, allowing a bounce too, a bounce in between each juggle, which may help. But
yeah, We do a lot
Yeah.
of that. And I think the other reason we do it, Coach, is it promotes a child wanting to get through the levels, just like they do on their cell phones or the computer games, and they will do it away from the practice field, right? And
Yeah.
the parents, it gives us the ability to tell parents, hey, practice level up or practice this, and it gives us the ability to do that. And then it gets, you know, as Tom Bayer says, gets the children working with the kids to do that. You know, so we got a lot of thank yous coming in all the way from Ireland. John Brogan. John, I hope I didn't kill you there with your name. This question comes in from my good buddy from the Iowa caucus, we'll call him, Matt Ream. He said, what are your thoughts on the grassroots play practice play methodology versus more traditional old school sessions plans at this age? So Matt's asking, you know, do we go with the stories? Do we go with the theme and the imagination activities, and what your thoughts are on play, practice, play?
Yeah, I think I'm more an old-fashioned guy right now, especially at the U6 level, and possibly U8 level as well, where I like those movement activities, you know, with multiple balls and so forth, those movement, which I call dynamic, focused relaxation activity or two, and then the dynamic competitive, which are competitive activities, game-like activities. I'm more of a proponent of those at these ages. Once we get to U10, the play, practice, play idea has actually always been around. I used to call it whole part whole.
Whole part whole, yeah.
Right, and I think it's great if in our culture, and I don't know if in our American culture we get the kids to do this enough, but if they can show up and start playing, I think that's wonderful. I think that's wonderful. I just don't know if we've advanced to that in this country yet. Maybe it's determined by the club if they're really promoting it and the kids are coming in and they're doing it. I've always felt that our culture required kids to come out, get them involved right away in a movement activity, you know, and then make it more game-like and more game-like and more game-like as the session goes on, finishing, of course, in the game. But all of it, game-like, I mean directional, typically with goals or inlines or whatever, but gradually moving until you get to the game. Smaller numbers, but game-like. Big, more numbers, but game-like. And then finally, full numbers, game-like. That's always been the way I felt a training session should be. But
yeah, no, huge. So, Coach, we're coming to the end of our time. Your final thoughts and key messages. We've been going along with the question and answers. What would your key messages be to the coaches that are listening and the coaches that will watch this later?
Well, with these age groups, my friends out there, with these age groups, players come first. You must understand who you're dealing with, and that will help you have the right personality yourself as a coach and create the right environment. Understanding what they can do, understanding who they are is the most important thing. It's much more important than trying to force proper technique and proper decision making at these young ages. And finally, don't be afraid of the parents. That was a point I was going to make before when we were talking about how to handle parents. Invite them to help you at training sessions, and that way they learn as well. The more they're around the team and the kids in the group environment, the more they'll understand what you're going through as the coach and what you're trying to accomplish. Talk to them at every training session and at the end of every game about the good things that happen and what they can work on at home. That would be it,
Brilliant.
Chris.
Brilliant, Coach. You've been super, and I can't thank you enough. And I can't impress upon everybody that's with us the role that Tom's had in my journey. And I can't express this enough, that children get one childhood, and it's our job as coaches to make it as memorable as possible. And don't just use this coaching these age group as a stepping stone to other things. Invest, and the rewards will become massive. Right, Coach?
That is very true, Chris. Unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you summed it up when I asked you about U6, and you just started smiling. Oh, I love coaching this age group, and it's evident. And watching you work has been a true pleasure, and working alongside you has been an even bigger pleasure. So, thank you, Coach.
You bet. And thank you, Chris, too, because we all learn from each other, and I've certainly learned a lot of soccer stuff from you. So.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm humbled, Coach. Everybody, thanks for joining us. We've got this is from Ruben. He's Ruben Mares. He's saying, I want to thank you both, Tom and Sam, for coming on today. I've been a fan of yours for so many years. This session was very good and helpful. This Saturday is my last game with my U5s. You are right in that they want to have fun and run. They also make me laugh a lot. Thanks to you, Chris, for hosting also. Ruben, thanks for being on. Thanks everybody for being on. This has been fantastic. Definitely my favorite webinar this month. So thank you, Coach. And I look forward to talking to you guys again soon.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks to Tom. Reminder, our next webinar is November the 12th, and we will have the European counterparts of Tom and Snam. We're going to have Pete Sturgis and Chris Vanderhagen. So, Coach, if you can get on for that too, I'd love to have you on as well, because you played a massive role in helping the English FA in their youth awards. So I think it'd be great if you could get on as well. But everybody, thanks for joining us. That one's going to be 11 o'clock Eastern. Remember, core value of the month is humility. Our guests today, Tom and Sam, exuded that, and I'm forever grateful that they're a part of my journey and humbled by both of them. Thank you, everybody. Be well, stay safe. Over to you, Coach. Any final words?
Thanks, buddy. No, I'm good. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us. I appreciate it. The more people we can talk to, the better it is. So.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep.